everybody, it's Catherine Chapman here, and today on my blog I am very, very privileged to have the lovely Karen Tranquil with me. Now I always go to point to what side you are on my screen, and actually then I look at the recording and for some reason you end up on the other side. I don't know how that works as I'm recording my screen, but whichever side you are, welcome, and thank you so much for coming. I'm going to give you a little bit of a big up and an introduction, and then I will give you a chance to talk. So Karen is mummy to 4 gorgeous boys. Yes, 4, that's what I said. Wife to Kenny, daughter, sister, Whitstable dweller, a fellow Whitstable dweller, fabulous friend to many, including animals and the planet. I did add that in actually because I wanted to get the vegetarianism in and your love of everything saving the planet. And is also a double cancer survivor and is now training for the London Marathon. Yeah, you heard that right too. It's unbelievable. So thank you so much for being with us today. So one of my main memories of you, and I have given Karen a bit of a heads up on some of these questions, was that when we were waiting for, and I think it was a school nativity, when our sons were in their first year of school, and you were leaning up against the wall, and I thought that something was really, really gravely wrong with you. Until you announced that you were expecting the twin boys. I was like, oh, okay. And you were having a really, really rough time of it with that pregnancy. And it was a bit of a shock. I mean, especially as you'd said that you were gonna get Isaac into school, and then you were gonna have one more child was the plan. Twin boys and some more surprises were on the way for you. So can you give us a whistle-stop tour, kind of from that point up to here, between pregnancies, boys, and cancer?
I'm trying to think where to start on from that. Isaac was in year 2 and the twins were in preschool. Mm-hmm. When we found out we were pregnant with Morgan.
Which again was a lovely surprise.
That was a huge surprise. Even the doctor looked surprised when I saw him, because really technically that wasn't meant to be possible. He was a huge surprise. I had been feeling ill, but never ever put it down to that. Thought there was and at the time actually, and Mark fits into this story, there was a really horrible virus going around. And I remember Kenny saying, because he was doing boot camp with Mark, I think Mark might have either didn't join in or had cancelled something. And I remember Kenny saying to me, it's made even Mark feel ill for a couple of weeks. So, this is vicious, it's a really bad virus. And I even saw the doctor who told me I had this really vicious virus that was going around. So it was all perfectly excusable the way I was feeling. But then, of course, it wasn't. And I was 14 weeks pregnant with Morgan by the time we found out. So then the rest of that pregnancy flew by in some senses, because it started so late. Mm-hmm. And then it really dragged because he came late. And then he was 7 months old when I got my first cancer diagnosis. So, and yeah, that was a bolt from the blue, because I was not young in terms of parenthood, but in terms of the general lifespan, I was young for diagnosis. I wasn't running at that point, but I was generally active. I've been vegetarian since I was 16, so didn't feel I really ticked any risk factors as such. So yeah, it was a big bolt from the blue.
Yeah, particularly for that type of cancer as well. You think that that you're eating healthy and all that sort of stuff.
Yep, they've decided to tell me obviously we've had all the genetic testing now because of age, and then trying to protect the boys' futures and stuff. But they said no, sheer bad luck. One of those things.
Yeah.
So then he was 7 months old. He was still being breastfed, and it was an end to all of that very quickly in order to start treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just had, I don't mean to say just, but it was chemotherapy for that one as well, or was there an operation for that one too?
I started off with chemoradiotherapy. So I had you take tablet chemotherapy, and I had 25 sessions of radiotherapy. So that was 5 days a week for 5 weeks, going through to Canterbury for the radiotherapy. Huge hats off to the radiotherapy department. They were the best functioning department I think I've ever been in the hospitals. They were amazing. And then so that was that kind of September. Then they offered to do my surgery the week. It wasn't a week before Christmas. It was something like the 20th of December. I was like, no. So I refused that, which meant my operation was then in the January of the following year. So then I had surgery to remove large part of my bowel, and I was given a temporary ileostomy, so a stoma and a bag. And I then, whilst I had that, I had what you think is more traditional chemotherapy. So I had a line in that runs through your upper arm, PICC line down to near your heart, so that then rather than them going in like your veins, and your veins can get pretty nasty, each time they just took it up to that until your treatment's finished. So I did that. Hair, because of the type of cancer type of chemotherapy I was on, your hair doesn't fall out. It can thin a bit, but you don't lose everything, so you don't kind of look like the stereotypical cancer patient in that way. And then once that had finished, they give you a bit of time to recover. So then the following October, I think, they reversed my ileostomy and put everything back inside. And so it was just over a year from beginning to end of treatment.
No, I mean that, and actually for things like ileostomies and stuff, that's an incredible turnover time for sort of reversing it as well. So two relatively big operations, but yeah. And then, so when did they give you the all clear after that one?
Well, the technical all clear came from operation. So from the first operation in the January, because they'd taken out any residual tumour that was left from the chemoradiotherapy, and at that point the lymph nodes were clear that they took. They said that's your kind of remission date, and then but you're still having the chemotherapy, even though they're not aware of anything being left. It was a just in case thing. I've forgotten now.
So after the adjuvant chemotherapy, and so they've given you the kind of official all clear then, and so then your next bolt out of the blue, how long was that between each of those?
I thought I was going in for my 2.5 year scan. So I thought I was going to come out kind of halfway through, because your aim is to get to 5 years remission. If you can get to 5 years, they kind of write you off and say you're back to general population risk. So I thought I was in for 2.5 years tick, and I wasn't. So I'd had the scan last July, so July 2019, had the scan, and then it was summer holidays, and I was literally in the bedroom packing to go on holiday, with the family, and the phone rang, and it was the consultant secretary. Say, we'd like to book an appointment to discuss your results. I was like, well, then that's bad news, because you don't do that. You know, you just, what's weird is that with your results, if it is literally, if it's no news, it's good news. They don't phone you to say, oh, we've got your results and everything's fine.
Yeah.
They just don't tell you anything. You just don't hear. So we want to book you in for an appointment. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's all gone a bit wrong then.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were trying to like book me in for the following week, and I was like, I'm meant to be on holiday. You know.
And I now know what you want to. I now want to know what you're going to tell me. Coming in now.
How big is this? Am I cancelling my holiday so I can make this appointment? You know, what's going on? So she actually put the consultant on the phone, and he said, "No, happy holiday. It's fine." I said, "You know, there's something that's, you know, something on your right lung." He wouldn't commit to what that something was. So, you know, I think they knew, but they weren't really saying it.
Yeah.
So it still leaves you that little bit where you go, oh, maybe it's not. But in your heart of hearts, you kind of know really that it is.
Yeah.
Lungs is one of the common, you know, metastatic points.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we went on holiday, came back, had the appointment, went into like a whole nother round of tests and PET scans so they could get a more detailed look. And then I said, well, yeah, we are pretty convinced, but we want to know, is it linked to the original cancer or is it a new cancer? I'm thinking, well, I'm the exercising vegetarian who's too young for bowel cancer, who got bowel cancer. Really, can I be the non-smoking person who gets lung cancer? You know. So then they wanted to do biopsy. So then it's, you know, you have to lie on. I had to lie on my front because of where it was. You have to lie perfectly still while they, you know, probe into your lungs and take a piece out. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, they confirmed it was linked to the original bowel cancer. So it wasn't the non-smoker getting lung cancer; it was just metastases of the original cancer. So then that was one isolated tumour. There's all different kinds of operation they can do if you've got a tumour in your lungs. I was hoping that they can do what they call like a wedge resection, which means they take out a piece that looks a bit like a pizza slice. But they said no, because of where mine was, it wasn't in a very accessible, easy place. I mean, you wouldn't be with it. No. So they had, although they were saying in terms of a lung tumour, it was relatively small. Because of where it was, they had to take the whole upper right lobe. So you're losing about a third of your lung capacity of that lung. And that was last November. Yes. Yeah. And then, although they said there was no lymph node involvement when they, when they took everything out and they had a look at it, lymph nodes weren't involved. But they said, belt and braces approach would be to go back onto chemotherapy again, which I did from this January to the end of March.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness me. And I mean, usually, like, I was going to say you were lucky to be able to have lung surgery. Doesn't sound quite like I mean it to, but it's actually not very usual for lung cancer patients to actually have any operations on it at all. So yay that they could even do that. And so you started running and exercising in between the two, didn't you?
Yes. So after my first diagnosis, when everything was finished, I actually went and did parkrun, Virginia Parkrun, and completely smashed out 2K.
I remember that first one. It was like a little pocket rocket.
He was so fast. I was thinking, I don't know if I could actually run 2K without stopping, and feeling quite ashamed of that fact. So I set myself the challenge if I was going to run 2K. Not a very big challenge, but yeah. I actually sat one night while the boys were settling to sleep. I sat in the dark with my phone and plotted on the map, you know, what a 2K loop from the house was.
Yeah.
And then I set off. It was March, I think, February or March, and it was dark, which was quite nice because no one could see me. And I set off and I did a little 2K loop from the house. And I was a lot slower than Isaac's Park Run 2K. And he was very pleased by that. And so then I thought, right, I'm going to do Couch to 5K. So I started the NHS Couch to 5K app, and it became a reason to leave the house alone at the end of the day. And it was legitimate. And, you know, I said to anybody, I'm going for a run. It's really important. So, yeah, it was just this legitimate way to leave the house and leave everyone else behind.
Yeah.
And I did like the fact at first that it was dark and no one could see me. And so, yeah, I went out in the cold and the dark, and did the Couch to 5K app.
I remember you doing it. I remember you kept going, and it went. I remember very clearly. It absolutely wasn't your favourite thing. The fact that you could escape from the house from the boys was amazing. But it, you know, if you could have found another way to escape from the house that didn't involve running, that's what you would have done.
The only good thing about every run was the end.
Yeah.
Getting home at the end. That was the only good thing about every single run.
But you clearly don't feel like that now about running.
No, it has been a journey, the run thing, and I still wouldn't say I'm a runner.
Yeah,
I would still class myself as a runner, but yeah, it's not. I was going to say it's not just an escape now, but it's actually still a huge part of why I run. It's still a valid reason to leave the house alone, and actually, the further you run, the longer you're legitimately out of the house for.
Oh no, I completely agree. Do you find that having sort of really picked the fitness up in between the two, did you find that it made a difference with dealing with the treatment and the recovery for the second bout?
Yeah, all the way through. Once I'd kind of committed myself to the Couch to 5K, it became a real thing mentally when I was out of, if it ever comes back, I'll be fitter than I was. Because I started to realise, actually, I am now over 40, and cardiovascularly fitter than I was in my 30s. Because although in my 30s I was doing Pilates, I was going to the gym. If I went to the gym, I had more of a free weights focus, because that's kind of what I enjoyed more than hitting a treadmill. Yeah. So it was this realization of I'm actually getting fitter. Yeah. And so if I ever have to go into any kind of treatment again, not always hoping that I wouldn't have to, obviously, but it was this thing of at least I'll be fitter if I do. Yeah. So then to get the diagnosis of not only was it back, but it was back in my lungs, and I was going to lose a huge chunk of lung. By then I'd started running with someone, and we just had this thing of, right, well, if you're going to lose a huge part of one lung, the rest of your lungs have got to grow and, you know, take over that capacity. And so we had this bunch of lungs of an elephant, and we would run, you know, as hard as we could in the run up to my operation to try and give me the lungs of an elephant in preparation for when they took a piece away.
I don't know if I've ever seen an elephant run, but like...
But they must have big lungs. When they run fast, they must have big lungs.
They must have. That's brilliant. And again, another one of my memories that will stick with me forever was you 4 or 5 days after you had that piece of lung removed, walking along the side of Junior Park Run, and I don't recall it being a very nice day either. And
it was November as well.
I was running down one way, and Kenny and one of the boys were coming back. I got towards the end, and they coming back the other way. And I went, "Have I just seen Karen?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, just an absolute rock star. It was just all the way through has been a complete refusal that it's going to get in the way of life in any way, shape or form. We'll make room for chemotherapy and surgery and all that sort of stuff, but you're certainly not going to take over my life. And it's just been, I mean, throughout the whole journey, you've just, yeah, it's just been, you've almost like you've taken it in your stride. And another thing that I have to say that's was completely admired what you've done all the way through is that you were ready and willing to ask for help and accept help, and did it so easily. You know, people kind of really do stumble over themselves about, you know, oh no, I'm going to do it all on my own. And people want to help. I mean, that first message that you first sent out, people were desperate to help. I mean, you made us feel very, very mortal. We were desperate to help. And I remember the second time you said it, yeah, thank you for, I remember saying thank you for reminding us quite how mortal we are again. But that was just that, yeah, when you were walking down the side there, and you even said, well, I'm not doing it all, I'm not going to walk all the way, or something like that. As if it was perfectly normal 5 days after surgery, lung surgery, to be doing it. But
I'm a little bit stubborn.
Yeah. Again, you were back determined. Like, we went out for a walk. You were, at one point, I think you were walking up the stairs quicker than me. You kind of really got back onto it quickly.
Well, yeah, because at that point as well, before I knew what was happening, I'd signed up to the Movember run.
Yeah.
In Hampton. Is it Hampton? And I had signed up for the 10K, so I did kind of think, oh well, that's, you know, that's a bit far. So I did write in and drop down to the 5K. So then, yeah, I did actually still go and do the Movember run. I can't remember what date that was now. Must have been the end of the month, the end of November. So yeah, it was a few weeks after that I was there doing the Movember 5K. Along the seafront, and yeah, I mean, I was one of the last to come in on the 5K. I mean, the 10K people were shooting past me, you know, they were coming back and going past me on my way back, and I sounded horrendous because I'd got this horrific wheeze that was, you know, worse on exertion, and I was trying to like shuffle my way along the seafront right while wheezing along, but I did it. I did my 5K. And then in December, I'd signed up for one. There was like a Christmas fun run, which was a 5 mile rather than a 5K. So that was a bit further. And I did lose my sense of humour at one point towards the end of that, because it was windy and it was started to rain. And yeah, I was wheezing, and, you know, the sense of humour did go for a little while. But it was nice to get to the end. And yeah, it's just, it was having those kind of targets. It's like, right, that's there, so, you know, that's booked, I'm going to do it. And it might have been slower than if I hadn't had, you know, thermal long chucked out, but, you know, I'll do it. So.
No, absolutely. I know you're absolutely right about the targets. And so now you've got a slightly bigger target.
Yeah. Well, after the first diagnosis, when I first started running, I did the Catch to 5K app. Then I'm gonna, just personality-wise, I'm quite target-focused and task-focused and lists and things. So the app had worked quite well, because it was like, you know, well, now you're going to go out and you're going to do this, and then this one you'll do this. And so I was like, well, what do I do now? I've done it. I've done the app. What? And I still wasn't particularly enjoying it. I wasn't just going to, oh, I'll go for a run. You know, I had to have something telling me what to do. So I downloaded the 5 to 10K app, and I followed that through. And it's like, oh, I've done that one now. What do I do next? And people are like, well, it's half marathon next. Well, that sounds a long way. And I thought, well, I'll just, and again, luckily there was an app. There was like a 21K runner app. So I thought, well, I'll download it. And, you know, I'll do some of it. And, you know, if it's saying 3 runs a week, it doesn't matter if I do 1 run, you know, whatever. It's just, at least it's something telling me what to do. And I was maybe halfway through that, and a charity slot came up for running the Vitality half marathon in London. the following March. So I realised then I would have gone from 0 to half marathon in a year, which sounded quite good to myself in terms of motivation and achievement.
Yeah.
And it was a charity called Mummy's Star, which had been supporting me since my diagnosis. So I thought, well, you know, it'd be quite nice to give back. So I signed up for that. And so that's what got me to the half marathon stage, and that felt like a really long way. And I can still remember finishing thinking, oh my God, imagine if that was halfway.
But still, you did it.
I did it. And I kind of thought I'd never ever do it again. I thought, right, that's that. Life achievement, done, tick.
Yeah.
And then it was after that I started running with someone. I'd never run with someone before. And then by chance, I can't even remember now how it came out, but discovered that one of the school mums, we run at a similar pace. We both have far too many children. So it's like, let's get out of the house together. And we started running together, and I discovered actually I really enjoyed that. Having wanted to be alone and enjoying running on my own, actually to run with someone was actually really nice. And then she hadn't done a half marathon, so we said we'd do one together. So then we booked ourselves in for the London Landmarks.
Yes.
Which would have been in March. But then, of course, two things happened. A, I was on chemo, and B, COVID. So it kind of got written out on 2 counts. So that's all been deferred to next year. And then I'm in an online running group on Facebook, and everyone started suddenly talking about, oh, it's all opening up, it's opening up, you can sign up online and do the virtual London Marathon, and it's 20 quid. And I was like, oh. And I think because there was so much kind of energy around it in the group, and so many people were chatting about it that day, I kind of got a bit caught up in the excitement of it all. And it was like, it's so hard to get into the London Marathon. It's not impossible unless you can get a sponsorship place and raise like £4,000 for a charity, which, you know, totally unachievable. You're never going to run the London Marathon. You're never going to get a London Marathon medal. And there was a chance for a London Marathon medal. And it was 20 quid. I thought, well, you know, if I don't do it, it's only 20 quid, isn't it, that you've lost? And I convinced my lovely insane running buddy to also sign up. And so then I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I might as well try and, you know, again, get a little bit of money from Mummy's Star. But the problem with that is once you actually start taking donations and people actually put in, after you put it out there, just a little bit of an idea, because, you know, you've risked your 20 quid. As soon as people start sponsoring you, there's kind of an obligation to actually, you know, do this thing.
Yeah, you got to do it.
So it turned right from a bit of fear of missing out and a bit of kind of, you know, floating around with the idea and, you know, how well, risk it, 20 quid, to, okay, I have actually got to do this.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so, and
very real.
Right,
this weekend.
You're going to get that medal. That would be so fantastic.
And it is the thing, if it's the 40th year of the London Marathon, so it's meant to be quite a special medal, and, you know, so yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. That's going to be fantastic. I'm going to get you to tell us a little bit about Mummy's Star in a minute. But the thing that really made me, I wanted to do a vlog with you because it's been really inspirational that fitness has become a big part of this journey. And, you know, clearly I'm going to love that. But it was when you wrote the post the other day, and you'd said about the fact that the running had really helped with the anxiety as well. And I mean, considering your journey so far, and then we crashed straight into the middle of COVID, you know, anxiety is not a surprising thing to have. And also I completely resonate with that, because when I was very, very anxious, the only time that I ever felt normal was when I was exercising of some sort. And often it was along the seafront or something, just sort of pounding it out. So so can you expand a little bit on that and the running and the anxiety, or the relief of it?
Yeah, I think with my first diagnosis, a lot of the anxiety was very specific. Obviously, fear of return. I don't think it ever goes away. But then it'd be like the chemo. So within the kind of cancer community, it's even got its own term. It's called scanxiety. So whenever you're going for a test, some kind of scan, CT scan, PET scan, whatever, MRI, you get very anxious in the lead up to the actual scan, and then they kind of leave you. It can take weeks or months to get your results. So then you ease off again, and then you get the build up of anxiety, back towards your results. So that was kind of my anxiety first diagnosis. Second diagnosis, it obviously confirms all those fears you've had about it coming back. And then, we hit COVID. So my chemo wasn't finished. So by about February, kind of halfway into the chemo, you're starting to think, this thing does seem to be bubbling a bit. And they said it was belt and braces. So is it worth going on? Is it worth carrying on and having the suppressed immune system, and kind of making those decisions about whether or not you are carrying on, and decided to carry on. And then it got even more real. And it became very real here, not just in this thing that was happening over there somewhere, in the Far East. And so, then it's like, well, am I going to survive cancer twice but be taken out by a virus? And so that became a huge fear that, I could go through all this and then catch a virus and die. And where does that leave us all? So we pulled the kids out of school a bit earlier than they actually shut, because I still had one round of chemo to go. So my last chemo started on the 19th of March. So just as kind of lockdown was kind of kicking in nationally, I was on my last round of chemo. By then, no one who wasn't a patient was allowed into the chemo ward. So where I'd always had kind of like a chemo buddy, because I'd be there nearly all day. So friends coming and like sitting and chatting and kind of passing the time. It was like, no, that wasn't happening. You were there on your own. At that point, you didn't have to be masked. That hadn't come in yet. So those changes of kind of sitting there on your own was very different. And then, the anxiety progressed into a more general anxiety. My capacity to run and exercise had been dropping. As the kind of chemo took more of a toll, I was able to run less far. I'd been doing some personal training sessions with Mark, which had been fabulous, and psychologically they were really good, because that really did feel like something positive. It was a real positive step for my health. And he was really good at adapting what I could do. And there were weeks I had to skip because of the chemo. The first week was always just a write-off in terms of exhaustion and energy and sickness. I think as my ability to exercise dwindled, the anxiety probably started to increase. And then with COVID, then it just became a more generalized experience of anxiety, and more kind of daily. And I think the being cut off, because I wasn't allowed to leave the house, I was put onto the shielding list. So we were literally confined to the house and the garden. So you couldn't go for that cleansing walk along the seafront or anything like that. And luckily we'd moved house the previous year. We added that into the whole cancer diagnosis bit and moved house. So at least we've got a big garden for the kids. I did pace out the lawn, and I thought, no, I can't run 5k in loops around here. I just don't have that commitment. I would go insane, even though I could see all these pictures of these amazing people doing it, in different groups. I was like, no, I just can't do it.
Run around in loops.
It feels like I'm running in circles around the kids day to day anyway. I don't want to literally do it around the garden. So someone really kindly, of course, treadmills sold out, because loads of people can find home. So someone very kindly lent me a treadmill. and it was a folding one.
Yeah.
So it is I still have it. I have offered it back. I do still have it. And the only place we could fit it was in the bedroom. So we have this foldable treadmill literally at the end of the bed. We squeeze past it to move around the room. But that became a bit of a saviour. I mean, I hated it. I called it the Dreadmill. I hated it. It is so different running 5k on a treadmill compared to 5k outdoors. So different. And I didn't really appreciate that difference when I first fixated on I've got to have a treadmill. But that was then my avenue back into fitness.
Yeah.
And I just had to start slow and short and gradually build it up, and stick with it. I think the first time you get into exercise, or a particular form of exercise, and you kind of got your targets for the first time, every time you do something, it's great. Yeah. If you've lost your fitness and you're trying to get back, it's actually a little bit soul destroying.
Yeah. You were like, I could do that before. Yeah.
And so kind of sticking with that and kind of going through that. But then again, that just became targets again and things to achieve and boxes to tick. Yeah. But then, so I was allowed to go outside. That was a huge, huge turning point. Yeah. And then being able to have a socially distanced run again.
Yeah.
Running buddies, psychologically, that's huge. And it's like, oh my God, I'm out with you and we're outside. And, that felt huge. Yeah. The anxiety didn't, that still goes on. I mean, that's going back to, I can't remember when we were allowed out again. Was it July, maybe?
Yeah, somewhere.
I can't remember how long we were at home for. So the anxiety didn't magically disappear just because I could go outside and run with someone again. So it's still there. It's different, and it's always shifting and changing. I think things like, and then you get things like, the kids go back to school, and then it's like, in one way that helps because you start to see people again, and have those little 5-minute catch-up conversations that drop off and pick up and things like that actually you've really missed. Yeah. But then also that brings out its own anxieties if you're around people again, and people and the viruses don't really mix. And
when that, and you start to get on that rat race again, don't you? You start to get having to do things. So you have to get the kids, they have to have uniforms, we have to sort out food. Whereas when we were in lockdown, it wasn't there wasn't the urgency and the craziness as there is when we're going back to a sort of normalish thing.
And it's like things where I think if you've been isolated, you're not aware of how isolated other people have been either. So we were extremely isolated. We had to be. None of us, it wasn't just I shielded, because I was shielding, everyone had to, so the whole house had to stay home. And so you're kind of aware that other people can do more than you. That's all you know, really. You don't know how much or how little other people are doing. And so, but in your mind, because you were literally doing nothing, everyone has done more than you, and so everyone must have stayed in more contact with each other than you. And so then it's that whole social anxiety of, well, the world's moved on, everyone's moved on, we've been stuck in this really isolated bubble, and the whole world's moved on. And then how do you re-engage with that world that's moved on without you? And actually the reality is it probably hasn't moved on that much without you, because people were still limited on what they could do. That's not what your anxious brain says. Your anxious brain says everyone else has just cracked on.
Absolutely. There's no sanity in that anxious brain at all, is there?
And that's the thing, you can't reason it. You can't reason yourself out of anxiety. And I think that's why things like the exercise help, and actually getting out and doing it help. Because if you are in an anxious moment, you're not going to talk logically out of it. But if you go and do something and you get those endorphins going, and you do get out, and you can either like go on your own, or with someone, and you can tell them you feel anxious and chat it through, or you can just talk about absolute rubbish, and it all still has the same effect. It's
really interesting that it kind of correlated along with with the kind of the lack of exercise, not helped by things like lockdown and obviously chemo as well. But yeah, no, it's I completely agree that it's just and it's you use it, they use it, don't they, as that moment to stop that run. I used to describe my anxiety, it felt like it was like a rogue like virus, you'll pardon the pun, in like as a computer just running in the background all of the time, just whirring all of the time. And so then when you went and you stopped that, you went and did something different, went off in a different direction, you just got that relief from it for a little while, and eventually those relief gaps just get longer and longer, and it goes the other way, and you just have little spaces of anxiety instead. Yeah, and eventually, as far as I'm concerned anyway, thankfully, it goes away pretty much completely. I mean, you know, the last 6 months has challenged that slightly, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So this is something I always ask everybody. Do you have something that is a non-negotiable for you, either in your daily or weekly routine?
The running definitely fits in there. You know, I do have to get out. He really laughed at me yesterday because you said to me today, I forgot to say I was going to ask you this question at the end. And I was thinking, but then Kenny actually laughed at me yesterday about what he said was the mumness of my run, because I hadn't run for about 10 days because we'd had a cold in the house, and I thought, I've got to get out, I've got to do a run. There is no time today for a run because I've got all these things doing. You know, one kid had forgotten a water bottle that needed dropping off at school because they're not allowed to drink from the fountains because of COVID. Two of them, the twins both put their coats on for the first time, you know, since winter, and they were a bit small. So they needed new coats. I'd got a product I needed to collect from, you know, a local kind of shop, local collection thing. So I literally put on a backpack, and I put the water bottle in the backpack, and I went for a run, and I dropped off the water bottle. Then I ran to town, went to Mountain Warehouse, bought 2 coats, shoved them in the backpack, then ran to the other side of town to do my collection and ran home. And I got a 10k run out of it. So I managed to tick up my mum jobs and get my run in. So yeah, I do get a bit kind of like, well, I haven't been for my run, you know, I've got to get out, I haven't been for my run. On a more daily thing, I did start the Duolingo app a long time ago now, just trying to refresh my French, and my target on that was always, you know, just 10 minutes a day, and I'm up to 170 something days now of, you know, just doing my little 10 minutes of Duolingo a day.
Wow.
I make no claims to be able to speak any French, but I'm doing my 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, just something for you though, isn't it? It's not for, I mean, it's easy, especially in that house full of boys, but it's easy to not do anything for you for the entire day. So
it's washing, and, you know, putting washing on, putting washing away, picking up toots.
So if you don't make that clear distinction that this is my 10 minutes, you could quite easily go through and carry on. There's no end of stuff to do.
There have been a lot of nights where I've got into bed and gone, I've not done my Duolingo. And sat in bed at night, just done my 10 minutes before I can turn the lights out to make sure it's done.
I love it though. There's commitment just before you to fall into bed. That's fantastic. Will you please, before we say goodbye, just tell everybody about Mummy Star and how they could support you? Well, I mean, they can come and stand along the seafront, support you if they wanted to. We'd rather they got their credit cards out.
Mummy Star is small charity. Bless them, all small charities struggling at the minute. But they're a small charity. They were set up when a mum was diagnosed with breast cancer in pregnancy. It was her second pregnancy. And sadly, you know, she was given a terminal diagnosis, but you know, she had the second baby, and before she died, her and her husband set up Mummy Star, because they realised that there was no specialised support for anyone who is diagnosed with cancer during pregnancy or in the first year after a baby's born, which is why I was coupled with Morgan when he was 7 months old. So they can provide grants, whether it's for equipment, because obviously if you get a cancer diagnosis and you can't work, or you're on maternity or whatever, then that, you know, can have huge financial impact. They'll also cover things like if you haven't got local family, because we were really lucky. My in-laws would come down, you know, every weekend if they were needed. They came. My parents live locally, so we had enough family support to manage, but other people don't live near family. So, you know, they'll cover the cost of, or contribute towards the cost of things like childminder sessions, you know, while you actually go in for your chemo, you know, because you can't take a toddler to chemo. People will take, you know, babes in arms, but, you know, you can't have a toddler running around a chemo ward, so then they can, you know, cover those sorts of session costs. They also have an online forum, which is really useful, so you can chat, you know, with other people kind of in your situation.
Yeah, it's quite a unique situation, I suppose, so it's good to have a point where you all are together.
Yeah. And they do kind of like they're now doing Zoom meetings and things like that, so, you know, all that kind of has developed over the last few months as well. And so, yeah, when I decided to do this madness of this next round, it's like, well, if I can get them a little bit of money just through some online sponsorship, then that's what I'll do. And also is the raising awareness. A lot of people haven't heard of them because they're a small charity. They also do health training, so or training for health workers, so they can go into cancer wards, they can go into you know, they do lots of talks to midwifery students, and kind of raise awareness. So as well, it's something of, even if people aren't in a position to actually donate at the minute, because things are really tough for a lot of people, actually just sharing on the fact that there's this fundraising link brings their name up, brings them to people's attention, so that if they hear of someone who's got a diagnosis, then they can say, well, actually, I saw this thing once, and there's this charity called Mummy Star, and they might be able to help you. You know, that kind of awareness raising is just as important as cash, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely incredible. And you've got a link, haven't you, that I will share.
Oh, thank you.
Somewhere around this. So what date are you running it?
4th of October, so it's next Sunday, week on Sunday.
All right, well, I'll have to get my pom-poms out.
Yeah, we haven't quite finalised the route yet, but the aim is to finish at the Royal, so we can have a pint at the pub when we're finished.
Well, that will be a well-earned pint. They're going to be on the floor after that.
I think I can crawl home from the Royal, it'll be okay.
Exactly. I'll come and pick you up. That's incredible. Thank you so much. I am in complete awe of the amazing, and what makes it more in awe is that you don't think that it's amazing at all. When I approached Karen, she was kind of like, why would you want to even talk to me? And I am absolutely sure that people will be inspired by your story, like in so many ways. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Lots of luck for Sunday.
I'd like to pretend I don't need it, but I do.
Let's just hope that wind's blowing in the right direction. Oh, thank you so much. So hopefully those of you watching on the vlog, this finds you finds you well and happy, and hopefully there's been some little gems in here for you too. So lots of love from us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.